Amen. all'impermanenza, il fatto che le cose si cambiano, si trasformano per una ragione, perché interagiscono. Se non c'è interazione, non c'è trasformazione. Lì dove c'è interazione, inevitabilmente c'è trasformazione. Non da una o dall'altra parte, da tutte le parti che interagiscono. Quindi dal momento che esiste qualunque tipo di interazione, inevitabilmente ci sarà trasformazione. Questo vuol dire che quando io interagisco con un luogo, io trasformo quel luogo trasforma me. Quando io interagisco con una persona, io trasformo la persona trasforma me. Quando io interagisco con un cibo, io trasformo il cibo trasforma me. E qualunque cosa io entro in contatto, io interagisco, io sono un agente di trasformazione, ma anche l'oggetto, la situazione, la persona, eccetera, con il quale sono entrato in contatto, anche a sua volta è un agente di trasformazione. Una cosa a cui Lama Gangchen ha dato tanta enfasi per tantissimi anni è sempre stato l'importanza di fare pellegrinaggi, di andare nei luoghi sacri, e anche un po' l'importanza di cambiare contesto, cambiare un po' aria e uscire un po' dalla situazione dove uno è abituato a stare continuamente. No? Però parliamo prima del primo punto. L'importanza di fare i pellegrinaggi. I pellegrinaggi, innanzitutto, vuol dire andare nei luoghi che vengono detti luoghi sacri. Un luogo sacro è un luogo dove è avvenuto qualcosa di particolarmente importante inteso come di positivo, perché proprio partendo dallo stesso principio, se io interagisco con questo luogo, io mi trasformo, e però trasformo anche il luogo trasforma me, io trasformo il luogo. Quello che viene spiegato è che ogni sentimento, ogni pensiero e ogni oggetto ha una sua anche vibrazione, cosiddetta energia. Poi dopo le parole spesso vogliono dire tanto e anche poco. Quindi. Comunque fatto sta che ogni luogo ha una sua caratteristica, quel luogo. E quando noi interagiamo con quel luogo, noi in qualche modo trasformiamo quel luogo. Perciò viene detto che un essere può benedire un altro essere, un essere può benedire un luogo e un luogo può benedire un essere. Il proprio concetto di benedire è un concetto che io personalmente ho voluto tanto tempo per, almeno credo di aver capito qualcosa. Però il primo giorno che io ho detto, ho capito qualcosa, ci è voluto tanto tempo. Perché io molto spesso sentivo dire, no, benedire, dammi le tue benedizioni, chiedo le benedizioni, un po' dappertutto, almeno nel contesto buddista abbiamo la parola benedizioni. Io mi chiedo, ma che cos'è la benedizione? Io chiedo le benedizioni, ma non so neanche cosa sto chiedendo alla fine dei conti. Chiedo una cosa che è una parola che rimane un po' astratta. Ero una volta in Tibet con l'abate di Tashilompo, NgalSo Rinpoche, che ci è venuto a mancare un paio d'anni fa, e ricevendo questi insegnamenti gli ho fatto la domanda e lui mi ha dato la seguente definizione: la benedizione è un'interazione, una condizione che ci aiuta a trasformarci positivamente. Okay? Quindi può essere una parola che noi sentiamo, può essere un luogo che visitiamo, può essere una qualcosa su cui noi addirittura pensiamo, un pensiero, un ricordo. Però quello che accade è che certe volte ci sono luoghi, incontri, parole, eccetera, che entrando in contatto con questi è come se sciolgono un nodo che c'era dentro, è come se c'è qualcosa che prima riuscivamo a capirlo concettualmente, ma non a sentirlo. E certe volte andando in certi luoghi, vivendo certe situazioni, è come se avvenisse una sorta di magia, che a un certo punto c'è un cambiamento particolare, no? Per esempio mi ricorda uno dei luoghi sacri a cui spero poter tornare presto, che è a Borobudur in Indonesia, che ho avuto l'esperienza diverse volte, sono stato lì almeno una quindicina di volte e ho avuto l'esperienza tantissime volte di arrivare lì e sentire una particolare gioia che dura durante il periodo che sono. E vedere che ha questa caratteristica particolare di sentire una cosa, come se le preoccupazioni, i problemi, qualunque cosa svanisse in qualche modo e durante quel periodo lì c'è una gioia particolare. Io ho sentito questo in quel luogo e anche diverse altre persone. Ci sono luoghi in cui quando vai in quel luogo ti porta a avere meno pensieri, avere la mente più serena, no? C'è un luogo così per me vicino ad Albagnano, nelle montagne dietro Albagnano, c'è un posto che si chiama Monte Spalavera, che si trova subito dietro Albagnano, a mezz'oretta in macchina, poi 2 ore camminando, però lì vicino, in quella zona lì, per esempio andare in quel luogo mi è capitato alcune volte che avevo un po' la testa un po' piena, andare lì aiuta proprio a svuotare totalmente. Questo è quando un luogo ti aiuta, quindi interagisci con il luogo, ti ricevi qualcosa. Esiste anche il contrario, esistono contesti nei quali c'è tanta tensione, c'è tanta ansia, c'è tanta paura, eccetera, e questo in qualche modo influenza il luogo e influenza chi a sua volta va e sta in quel luogo. Una delle cose che io avevo visto nelle città è il fatto che abbiamo creato in un certo modo l'abitudine di correre. Ci sono dei posti che hanno questa caratteristica. Milano è uno di questi, che può avere i suoi lati positivi e i suoi lati negativi. Ma io mi ricordo già tanti anni fa, venendo a Milano, quando arrivavo in un posto e ho visto succedere questo un po' di volte, ho osservato, ho visto che succede più o meno nello stesso momento. Arrivando a Milano c'è un punto dove ancora alla fine dell'autostrada, dove venendo a Milano a destra c'è un grande carcere. Non so quale carcere, quello di Volante, non so di quale, il carcere di Volante. Comunque sia.
And every time they would come, to go into caves, etc. Because it's important to have these moments of silence. And where do we look for silence? We look for silence in nature. So I remember these words of Rinpoche, Lama Gangchen Rinpoche said that nature is 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 the best. So it's the best. He said nature is the best pilgrimage. And it requires an internal intention. It's not just being not just an external trip, voyage. It's something that's going to happen inside. You know, maybe resentment I haven't been able to pacify, knots that I need to untie. Or maybe something I want to understand. Some kind of inner quality I need to develop. So I need to have an objective, and it's something that has great, great power. And also, a pilgrimage takes its own time. You need to, the voyage itself, and instead if you want a pilgrimage and you go outside your house and then you take um, your private plane and you arrive there and take a helicopter, and the same for back. Maybe you've gone to a holy place. Maybe you got off the helicopter and you touch the holy place for a minute, but the actual trip of going and coming back, this is very important. And today we have transport and communication very quick that don't respect the time, the emotional time that we need to elaborate all of this, because the speed from on a cognitive level to see and to understand, instead the the the, the emotional speed to elaborate an experience is another. And something that happens today is that we jump from one experience to another, from one place to another, from a situation to another. So it seems like everything's normal, and I just do 1,000 things together, go from one thing to the next, you know. It seems like everything's working. We just jump from one thing to the next, and it seems like everything's fine until then we just get upset from something that has nothing to do with that thing. Because when I'm interacting with someone, with a physical person, you know, there's an emotional part that is being elaborated. There are emotions that come outside, aversion, attraction, so many things. And when that ends, and if right away I start something else, I don't leave enough time to elaborate, to digest um, um, that emotion. Right away, I'm into another situation that brings a different emotion. And then gradually we just mix emotions from one situation to another, and then these emotions accumulate, and we don't leave the necessary space to digest um, our own emotions. So we can take the same concept of time. Time, this unit of measure, change. Time is change. And if we see from a point of view, from what I've understood at least, and I'm the worst person to talk about science and physics, etc., because um, um, I, I I went from school at a young age to Buddhist philosophy. From the little that I've seen, there's what is called absolute time, invented by Newton, let's say, and just a time that is constantly going, that is always the same. Let's say the time from a watch, and then there's a relative time where there's this not there's like past and future as cause and result. So, and time is not an abstract unit. This absolute time that we learned as children, what somehow we've become a slave, following the watch, the clock. Every, each one of us, we have a way to measure time. Our clock, our cell phone. I mean, we're always, running after time. But what is time? Time is relative. What can seem like a lot for one is little for another. But if time is really the unit of measure of change, the change comes through interaction, then emotional time and rational time have two different times, because this the, to elaborate our emotions requires different interaction. In different interactions, it needs a certain amount of change, and often we don't give that space for that interaction to come about, and we stay stuck. It's not that I get angry and then I just jump on to something else and I'm laughing and smiling, and that emotion of anger or something else, it has totally disappeared somehow. I mean, it stays somewhere. So it becomes very important for us to be able to give space, to elaborate our emotions. And we got to this point that, like, once this, this the travel time was longer, so there was more interaction, and so the transformation was greater. Once to go from one place to another, you needed days, you needed effort, and every action brings brings change. This makes me reflect also on the fact that we say today we have more time because we do things faster. I have more time because in the same day, in the morning, I can be in Albaniano, and then, and then, COVID permitting, I can get on a plane and go to Tokyo for, be there. I mean, we have the means to do this, and so we have this idea that we have more time available. And if today, time, if if time is not something abstract, that we consume, but it's actually the change that comes through interaction. The more, the more I interact, the more time I have. I don't know if that concept's clear. And from there, a question, a very important question comes to my mind. I mean, what am I interacting with? What is filling up my life? Because in every interaction, life is going by. Often we're fixated with numbers. Oh, I'm 40 years old. Now I'm 39. This year I'm going to be 40. A lot of time's going by. And then, no, when someone someone dies, the first question is, how old was he? But now he's passed. So what does that matter? I mean, what determines the quality of someone's life is what they had become, what um, how did they spend their lives, not the actual time. I mean, just look for ourselves. Sometimes their experiences that last, they're very, very quick, very short time passes, and they leave just a deep, strong mark. Other experiences that we can spend a lot of time just repeating the same experience and don't mean much. So now, how much time, actual time from our watch, we have to without how long we live, that's not so much important. That's not that important. But how we interact, what we fill our lives with, this is important. And I'm going to just say it. I'm going to share with you that every once in a while I have this feeling that this, we have many, many distractions, interact with things that at the end of the day, they don't add up to anything special. So they don't help us understand something new. They don't help us develop quality. They don't help us transform ourselves. And instead, we try to avoid suffering and we look for pleasure. We stay in this this pleasurable hypnosis, trying to stay entertained. I was a child, very small. I was fixated with with like the TV. I mean, put me in front of any TV program, I'm just you know, almost, or with regardless. I mean, put any TV program on, I can spend hours just watching, and that's why I really need to be careful. I mean, same thing with social media. Gi- You know, Instagram. If you give me Instagram, I'm gonna look at every um, ad that comes up. And this is why I look at everything. That's why I don't have it because I know my own limits. I see that someone can take this strange object in his hand when you see it, and after before you realize it, hours have gone by, and what have you concluded? What? Nothing. The worst is not nothing. It's that every image that I see leaves a mark. It interacts with me. What happens too is that I don't know exactly how to explain in clear is that behind every action there's an intention. Okay? So if I write something, I have this intention. If I say something, I have an intention behind that. Everything we do is done with intention. And I don't know how to explain it in such a logical way. So, but I'm absolutely sure that when you do something, it's the intention with which we do it has a kind of strength in the interaction that then it comes after. With the intention with which I do it, beyond the specific words that I'm going to use, or the intention has strength. Call it motivation, but the why I do something. So something that I see is that lot of information that we interact with. I mean, what's the motivation behind that? Often, the intention to use our own mechanisms of attraction and aversion to increase our attractions and aversions. In other words, what is advertisement for? Is to increase inside of us, our attraction and satisfy the desires of someone else. People don't write ads for us because they love us, and well, they don't love us, but the reason for saying these words, using these images, because I need to get the attention, because I want this person to feel this, think of this, and take some energy, and and have that person invest a part of their energy by buying this product. But if we see, for example, a person puts an ad, image, posts an image, I'm at the beach, or I'm eating this, or I'm here with my friends, or I'm looking at flowers. I mean, why are they doing it? What's the intention that's behind it? This is an important question. I'm going to share something because I want to obtain recognition. I want to cultivate a kind of image, or I want to transmit something beautiful to someone else. It can seem that it's different, but it's not. Remember that everything that we do, everything we interact with, well, and there are certain types of phenomena, we can call them, that need time for it to interact. And we need to gradually close, or there are certain concepts too, certain experiences, that to be able to even to develop certain states of consciousness, they require interaction, they could require repetition. We need to be careful to not let life go by. With with pizza and Netflix. Before you say like bread and circus, now bread and pizza and Netflix. Everybody eat and sleep and pay bills. So a large part of my life and energy and knowledge they use to obtain resources to support. That's normal. But there's another. But there are very few people who have the luxury to be able to to have a job, a livelihood that is also a life mission. There are very few who have this luxury, and I don't see I don't see anything wrong with doing any job. Um, whether you're working. Um, or it's not so important the kind of work, but how you're doing. You know, you're working to support yourself, and you're interacting. And with every interaction, we're reinforcing habits. Every time I interact with anger, I'm reinforcing anger, or same thing with fear. Every time I interact with an attitude of racism, I'm I'm reinforcing racism. So let's remember that even in the context of work, our spiritual path is And in every place that there's interaction, our spiritual path is present because that interaction is that brings transformation. And there's a kind of an aspect of our mind, our emotions that is involved in everything. I mean, it's not indifferent. It's not that I have to do a job that needs to be objectively spiritual. No, I need to do my job with an attitude that helps me grow. Then we have the rest of our lives where we have the freedom, let's say, to use our energy to do what we choose. If my job is to clean a place or something else, I need to do what I'm asked to do. That time, we need to take care of our health. We need to interact with people, take care of the relationships, and this takes up a lot of energy, a lot of time, And again, it's how we do all of this. And then there's a part of our time, let's say, is ours. And what often happens, we, we try to fill that time with something that just makes time go by. There's, senses, like sensory stimulation is important, and we have this idea that pleasure is happiness, related to food or any kind of pleasure of the body, from TV or films or sex, or the pleasure of our senses. Nothing against the pleasure of senses, absolutely nothing, except that they're not enough. And we go, well, the more I have, the more I want. What happens with the sense, the senses it's not that I want water, but I want that sensation of pleasure that I get when I drink water. And what happens is that the more water I'm able to get, the more water I'll need to bring myself to that same level of satisfaction, or types of different, different kinds of water. And then water's not enough. I need juice. I need to always be looking for more to reach that inner state of pleasure. I'm just going to take advantage to add. I was I was watching a documentary on Western philosophy, and they were talking at this perspective of nature, and they used this example, talking, saying that happiness is not in the result, but in the path. So if you spend a week to get to the top of the mountain, once you've gotten to the top of the mountain, you say, "Oh wow, wonderful!" There's a certain joy that comes. If you take a hot helicopter, you get to the summit, and you go, "Oh, how beautiful! That's lovely. Now let's go back." So where is it? Where's the sensation of joy to having? Is, is there more joy? Does more joy come from walking a week getting to the top of the mountain, or just taking a helicopter? It's the effort that we put into it that helps us give value to people. It's not the effort that generated joy, but it's the importance that we give to it, and we see if that thing is more or less precious, and it makes us feel more or less lucky, or give us, and then give us more or less happiness. This road is important to go towards our joy. in to reach something pleasurable. And with this, let's get to the point, experience the pleasurable sensory, um, the pleasurable sensory experiences have no limit. The more I have, the more I want, and I'll just always have to keep changing. I remember once watching a good film was something wonderful. I remember that when I had the opportunity to see a good movie, you were there and you let yourself taken by the the this film and you leave your reality, you get into marvelous experiences through this story. Now, instead, we just, we can so many choices, and it doesn't have the same effect. Oh, yeah, watch this, watch that. I mean, I don't think it's just me. I think that a shared idea because it depends on the value that we give to things. And here I have some advice I've given it many times, and it's not a spiritual. It's not spiritual advice. It's mundane advice, but if there's something we like, an object or a relationship with somebody, can even be that. One of the best ways to maintain a relationship that is pleasurable. There needs to be a relationship of seduction and conquest. When there's seduction and conquest, even with I go to a play and it was difficult to get there, when I see really experience all the beautiful qualities of that place, you know, like like what's so wonderful, like what I love about panettone, it only comes out around once a year. So I have to wait for Christmas, and it's waiting that it also um, makes me appreciate it more. But I'm sure that if I were able to have panettone all year long, I would I would I wouldn't enjoy it as much. It would just lose um, it, it's so waiting, 12 months, it's something special, and when it gets there, wow. So this relationship between seduction and conquest is important for anything. If one wants to ruin a relationship with his object of desire, then just have that, make sure that you have access to it all the time. I had this experience, when I was very young. I was about 14 years old. I was in India, where I lived at the time. It was very difficult to get anything from the West, let's say, food, etc. And one day, I don't remember how, but a little box of Swiss milk um, chocolates arrived, or it seemed absolutely wonderful. Um, Sweets, milk sweets. And I was like in the countryside of the countryside. The closest country was the closest city was about 10 kilometers. You know, but if we wanted to go to the pool, it was about 2 hours by car. But 80 kilometers. I needed to go. If I needed to go to the dentist, it was 6 hours in the bus. You know, so so these, you know, instead. So when I received these sweets, they were so special. When was I ever going to have them again? It was great moment of pleasure. And then later, I found myself in Bangalore, a big city, and there was a special um, store where there was some things from abroad, and then I found myself in front of these like an enormous box of these sweets. Those sweets, and so I got home. I was so happy, and I was there studying, and you know, I put one in my mouth, and I just go on. Like the first day, I must have eaten so many. The second day, maybe two, and then I didn't have any more, and they just stayed there. So what happens is that what determines the value of something is not this intrinsic characteristic of that thing, but the value that is attributed by the observer, often based on a comparison, and the level of pleasure that that thing gives doesn't is not defined by an intrinsic characteristic, but again by the value that is attributed to it. It's a story I've told many times about the monkey and the cucumber and the grape. I like this story. I'm going to tell it one more time. So maybe someone, I don't know, maybe there's somebody out there who hasn't heard it. I'm a little bit boring. I say the same thing. Okay, but there's some things that really touch me, and this is one of that. This is an experiment done in the 1980s where they take two monkeys, they put them in two cages, one in front of the other, with glass between them to see each other. They came from the same group of monkeys, so they know each other. This is an important factor here. So, and they teach the monkeys that when they take a stone, they give it back and they receive a reward. So, at the first phase, they give the stone, and then the reward is a piece of cucumber. The monkey eats it, is very happy, and the monkey next door does the same thing. And then they go back to the first one, and they repeat this like 50 times. They give the little stone, and then they get the cucumber, etc. In the second phase of the experiment, the same monkeys, the same little stone. So the first monkey, stone, cucumber, and then the second monkey, stone, and then it gets a grape, and then they go back to the first one, and stone, and again, um, um, cucumber, and the first monkey gets absolutely furious, and then even takes and then they do it again, um, and takes the stone and just taps it against the glass, saying, "Why did he get the grape and I get the cucumber? Why is so much injustice?" At a certain point, the cucumber had no value whatsoever, and the monkey, it just didn't want the cucumber at all, as were before, it was very happy. So what determines the value of the cucumber? Is it intrinsic characteristic, or the value attributed on the base of a comparison? And this happens to us. Most of us, we would have everything, everything that we need to be happy. Um, um, then something else came to my mind. So, these with the first cell phones that came out, I remember the first iPhones. I remember this is going to revolutionize the market of cell phones, because at the time looking for we were looking for a cell phone that Lama Gangchen was using. I was looking or a phone where I can put photos and audio, you know, and write in. Um, what happens if I'm going to compare an old Nokia with, any phone that you find, any cell phone that you find today is marvelous, you know, but um, but no one is satisfied because there's always something more, there's always something better. But what determines the value of something is not the intrinsic value. Because let's say that most of the functions of the things, in this technology, we don't need them, we don't use them. But we create necessities that don't exist, and we, oh, that one doesn't have a great value because there's something better. But if what determines the value is not an intrinsic characteristic, but a value that is attributed by us, let's try to use that to our favor. I'm going to give a value to the things I have and not spend so much time using up our lives, just consuming more and more. But what I mean is on a material point of view, if not other, we have everything that we need. We're lacking nothing. What we are missing is is obtaining what I would want, but that was more beautiful than what I have, but we have much more than what we need, but we just use up so much of our life of 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 saying, "Oh, that one's better," or "I would like to have this." This is something that, I mean, just life goes by, life goes on, and how am I spending it? Having said all of that, there's another important point. Sorry, just to conclude, this mundane advice is when there's something that we like, whether it's a person or we have a good relationship with someone, we need to cultivate it. This reminds me of my master Ken. We had a wonderful relationship, and at, but where we lived, there was only one kitchen, with two fridges. He had his, I had mine. And I used to cook for myself, and he would cook for himself. At a certain point, it seemed a little silly. I went to him. I said, "Ken, you cook every day for yourself. I do too. We eat at the same time. Why don't we do like this? So you cook one day, and then I cook the next, or I cook every day and you can do something else. You know, let's try to optimize our resources in this sense." And his answer was no, no. He was a man of few words, really. But afterwards, I kind of insisted. Again, I just explained to me why. It wasn't a, a, a curt no. It was just like, no. Why not? Said, do we get along or not? Yes. I, we care for each other. We get along really well living together. Yes, it's true. That's why we're not going to cook together. He said, if one goes, if if you get too close, sooner or later there'll be a reason. There'll be a reason. So when there's a relationship that is precious to us, we need to maintain that um, that seduction and conquest, and to give value. It's really hard in the role that I have, this spiritual role that I have as a lama, to that traditionally lamas were put in a position where there's a throne or a kind of this respect or importance. I'm happier sitting on the floor. That I prefer to choose my own food. I don't need to be served. You know, well, there's a kind of this certain level of respect, and there's nothing against it, but I had to learn to accept it. And at the end, I mean, the, what the function? I mean, the more I value it, the more I value, the more the more value I want to give to the teachings or what I hear. I've 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 found people, for example, who had to wait for months to talk to me, and and had great benefit from the short exchange that we were able to have, compared to those who maybe can interact much more often. So that's what I need to accept. So if I find myself in this position, this role, um, so it's Dharma that is being respected. And that is our mechanism. The more respect I give to something, the more naturally I'm going to be able to follow it and um, in the right way. I've seen this, for example, not being able to 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 see the a master, the, the advice that would be given would be um, really appreciated. So when something is precious to us, we need to give value to it, because the more value we give it, the more value we give, the more it will give to us. If there's something important to us, we shouldn't take it for granted, and to not take it and not take for granted, we shouldn't take too much of it. And to maintain that relationship of conquest and seduction in some way. It has to do with the food that we eat, the places we go. It has to do with the clothes we wear. If there, if there's a there's clothes that you like a lot. If we wear it every day, then it's no longer that's the special outfit that you put on. So this is my advice. When something is precious, just don't take too much of it. Leave leave a little bit this game. Because we have desire. Desire is part of our lives. The problem is when we don't allow this game and we take too much. I like water so much. I drink too much water. That brings dissatisfaction. At that point, I need to look for that same pleasure somewhere else. But and at a certain point, I don't know where to look anymore. In Tibetan, there's a term that's Döba. Duva means desire. Trun is something like to watch over, to like it's like to watch over your desire. It means that when you when you're watching over the desire of someone else, you're trying to satisfy every desire they have. And to survey your own desire means trying to satisfy every desire. And it's one of the worst things you can do for someone else, because when you're able to get everything you want, you develop a deep sense of dissatisfaction. The result of the result of the result of being able to get your objective desire is dissatisfaction. I hope that should be clear. It's something, I mean, we need to play with in our life, within our life, with our relationships, with our give 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 value to things. So I give value to something. I know how important it is. In any case, the other important point that I wanted to share with you today is that if if we're strongly influenced by the places that we go and the people around us and the words that we hear, the images that we see, but but we're influenced even more by our own thoughts. This, among all the influences, this is the strongest. I've observed this in many, many times. It's very strong. Through our thoughts, we're creating our reality. You know, we've seen the we've seen the importance of giving value to something that can determine the pleasure or pain, but coming back to this idea of time, which is this unit of measure of change, today, when I began began, I thought, how long has it been since we've seen each other, and I asked myself, you know, what has changed in your life, you know, beyond, masks that we have to wear or not being able, to go out the way we were used to, et cetera, et cetera. But what has changed inside? What have we interacted with? Let's remember that one of the factors of greatest change are our own thoughts and our own emotions. So, yes, going to holy places is important. The place where we live, the context of our own family and our friends, and where we work, where we eat, this is all very important. Um, very important. But what I think, on the scale is worth a lot more than that. Also because, I mean, how often, how much time do we spend interacting with our own thoughts? They don't, there's no, there's no frontier. It's a lot easier. Okay, there's a place that's harmful to me. I leave that place. There's a thought that is harmful to me. The more I try to take it away, the more it sticks to me. And Buddha helped us understand better that there are certain thoughts, certain emotions, certain inner states that we can call toxic, negative, traditionally called mental defilements or poisons, the inner states of being that hurt. Nyomo in Tibetan, speaking Tibet. There's the mental states that when they manifest, they bring us to reach a strong state of non-peace. The mental defilement definition. So when one cannot experience peace, when one has a mental defilement um, manifest. So these states of mind or emotions, you know, they don't come from nothing, and much less from external condition or tendency. Being good Buddhists would say, oh, I shouldn't get angry. Oh, but look what happened. How I know I should. I say the prayer, may all beings have happiness and its cause I want everybody to be happy as long as they have. I know I should never criticize a brother, a brother or sister of other brother or sister following the same path. But look what they're doing. So what happens is when we're living, when we experience a negative emotion, and we know that that state of being is harmful, often somehow we allow that we allow that state to continue by victimizing ourselves. Or we say, no, I feel like this because he said this, yeah, that one did, this person, they act like this, they act like that. So, you know, imagine, you know, imagine a Buddha that loves everyone. Um, so, I mean, imagine if it were like that for Buddha, he'd be constantly upset since he's looking to everyone. But independently of why has happened, inde- independently if someone put poison in front of you, it's up to you to drink it or not. And what's harmful to us should be avoided with, without going around too much. These are habits, and what happens is that we have so many habits. We have the habit of judging. We have the habit of projecting that the other and the world around us and situations need to correspond to our expectations. We have the habit of aversion, of attachment, etc., of victimizing ourselves. And I say habit because there are things that, we don't think about it 3 times, I mean, not even once, it just happens. That's it. And we need to try to diminish their strength in our life because we're made of habits in the sense that the more I do something, the more strength that thing takes. The less I do that thing, the less strength it has. And this is um, a path that is not easy, but or simple. I mean, but the first thing is we need to develop awareness. Awareness understood like observing our mind, observing our emotions, observing our speech, our actions. Be aware, being aware of ourselves doesn't mean that we're able to control it or direct ourselves. I see, I know I shouldn't drink water, but I like water so much. Oh, I'm drinking water. It's so good. But I know that I'm doing something that is bad for me. But not in this case, but what happens is the awareness is the first step, and it can be quite frustrating because one drinks it and it's not able to control it. But we're made up of habits, so it's not enough just to understand. One needs to create the opposite habit. So mm, this first step is observing ourselves, not observing others, just ourselves. Remembering, I'm just going to open and close the parentheses quickly. I mean, the teachings of Dharma are for judging ourselves and not for judging others. Monastic vows, for example, it's it's prohibited to teach the monastic vows to those who have not taken them. Well, how to? What are you kidding? You don't explain the vow to me before explaining it to me, so I need to take it as in a closed box. and open it up later seems a little bit strange. And the reason, what is the reason? Because because those because then those who don't have the vows can't judge those who have taken them. But these vows are personal, and this is something very serious in the monastery, and a lot of importance is given. That I remember asking, will you explain to me? No, no one, because no one who, because, and of course, even those who have the vows shouldn't be judging others. Sometimes there's, terms that come about, and once I hear, "Oh, that's not a dharmic attitude, Lama, that's not a dharmic attitude." But if we need to judge, if an attitude is agreement with the teachings or not, we need to it needs to be towards ourselves. Absolutely not use the teaching as a tool to judge others or to feel superior to others. And I just, okay, I said it, now it's over. I need to just say it more, but it has its importance, what I've said. So we need to observe ourselves. And once I'm able to see some of my own behaviors, and I can observe my emotions, and sometimes it's not easy because we have habits that we don't like. And when we see that, every once in a while it happens that one tries to justify himself by looking around what surrounds what surrounds us, and it's an attitude. When people say, you with it has to do with others and him and ourselves. Let me just try to explain better. There's someone who's painting a wall. I don't know, in Italian, the word to paint a wall is imbiancare. It was like to make white. And so I don't understand why it's called imbiancare, making white, when you can make it yellow or blue. So someone's painting the wall, and I say, "Oh, the right color for the wall is green." And I'm just trying to say one thing I'm saying is that the correct color is green, not yellow. It's the only thing I'm saying. I want the person to say, fine, and to stop painting yellow and to start painting green. And that would be the end. But if somebody's painting yellow and I say that it should be green, then people say, oh, well, they, it's, I that someone else told me that, they told me to paint it yellow. Oh, but yellow's nice. Oh, but it's not my fault. I mean, I didn't need to do anything to. I'm not saying any of that. Honestly, I'm just saying that the wall should be green and not yellow. Instead, there's a whole process of trying to justify oneself, and sometimes we do this with ourselves too. We see something that's not going right, instead of saying, "Okay, this is not going right, I should substitute it with what is." We say, "Oh, because, if this were like this and that was like that, and if I were in a different situation, and if we here and there," you know, nothing has to do with any of that. We're just here, the situation is not, uh, doesn't go well, we need to do this instead, because to create different attitudes and habits, there's a fundamental principle, is that, we need to like, accept and direct. This works, towards others and towards ourselves, and starting with ourselves. If we're able to do it with ourselves, we can do it with others. The first step is to accept, to kind of accept oneself, welcome oneself, be kind with oneself. Say, "Okay, everything's okay. I did this. Oh, I should have, oh, I did this, I should have done this, I know I have this habit. I'm sure that if every one of us does a sincere criticism of ourselves, there would be a long list. I'm the first one. One day, if we want to do this, if we want to see, who has the longest list, and then maybe, I think I can really participate well. It's not like saying, "Oh, I'm perfect and marvelous." No, we accept ourselves that, "Okay, I am what I am as a result of all the causes and conditions, interactions of everything that I've lived and experienced up till today. This is what I am, and I love myself as I am." So I I'm kind to myself. I am It's like when I accept myself, it's like that leaf that falls in the perfect place. We see the leaf that follows, or the wave of the sea, the way it breaks. The leaf is perfect where it falls because in front of all the causes and conditions, all those variables, it couldn't have been different. And in the same way, it's just as the position of the leaf that has fallen is perfect, I am perfected, which doesn't mean we don't have our defects. It doesn't mean that we have our dis negative or destructive, um, uh, behaviors or suffering. It just means that in front of all the causes and conditions and variables and complex, um, interactions, we couldn't be different than what we are. But we have this freedom of choice. We don't have the freedom to be different, but we have the freedom to interact in one way or another. We have the freedom to say or not say, do or not do, go or not go, follow a thought or not. Our freedom is very small, and I don't have the freedom to be something totally different from what I am like that. But I have the freedom to take minuscule choices, the everyday choices of what we do, and every choice changes the direction a little bit, changes the way we interact, and the way that we transform in what we become. And one important passage in all of this is that when certain habits show up, or they come up as instincts like anger or jealousy or envy or judgment, things that we know are harmful to us, the first step after this awareness, so this second step, is to stay neutral. As if we were observing from afar. And remember, I am not that emotion. It will pass because as it comes, as it arises, it will go. I mean, tell me. I mean, tell me, who has ever gotten angry and then just stayed angry forever? I've never seen anybody. No matter, no, I mean, regardless of how much one can get angry or have a strong jealousy or envy or even joy, it doesn't last forever. As it comes, after a while, it ends. You know. So when a negative emotion, let's remember that it will pass. And we need to put effort to not materialize it, to transform it into action, into interaction, not transform it into communication in words even written, and possibly not even through an inner dialogue, not enter into an inner dialogue or emotions. Oh, I did this because because I should have done this, etc. Just don't go into that. Just observe it and watch it go. I think it's happened to everyone. And, someone's come to you taken by a strong emotion. Has come to you saying stupid things, and one knows that the person is taken by that emotion. one shouldn't give value to that emotion, but the more one interacts, it's like the more wood one puts onto the fire. You know, it, I think we've all experienced this. You know, it took me just very little to understand this. I mean, in India, where I grew up, you say what you say. But I understood that if you say if he's in that I I learned that that here in the West that there's so much more said um, between the lines than like the actual words, you know. But anyway, when a negative emotion comes out, we need to have this awareness, and the second step is to not materialize the emotions because when I do that through interaction or through words or through thought, each one has a different level of strength. It's a physical, um, the physical, the strongest, and the thought, the lower. So every time I react, and I'm reinforcing that way, reinforcing that habit every time that it it, it manifests, and I can't find fertile soil to manifest it, then that habit weakens. Oh, I wouldn't say, "Oh, that's going to take a lot of time." Yes, it does. It's a many, 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 many times, but gradually that habit weakens. Like anything, there's something that that if someone is used to doing something, like cooking, for example, at a certain point that, 2 months go by without cooking, you need a bit, to pick it up again, and it's just the opposite is true, when you stop reacting in a certain way, then that habit weakens, and at the same time, we should generate, an positive attitude, a positive, habit. Life is happening in every interaction, every moment, every day, and we are living beings, and we're also sentient beings, which means that we have a mind, which means that we have the freedom of choice on how we want to interact, something that according to in according to Buddhist tradition, an animal is a sentient being, um, but a rock or a tree is a living being, but it's not a sentient being. They're, these are very, very coherent rules of interaction. So if you do this, then this happens. I mean, they react always at the same point. So it's a lot easier to react and to interact with plants. You do something to the plant acts in the same way. Instead, with a person, regardless of how you interact, they respond differently. You know, my point is that life should be lived with awareness, and life is made up of experiences, moments, and it goes by quickly. One day, I was reflecting the other day. I'm thinking about very important. moments in my life that came, like when Rinpoche left his body. It's the actual time that on our watch is what's not important, but what I've learned, how I've grown, who am I today? This is what's important. So the question at the end of the day is, how do I interact? People are upset because there are things that we just don't agree with. Let's say or that person does that thing and they shouldn't do that. Okay, but if that's a reason to be upset, okay, be upset. We can really be upset. Question what the person should do. The question is what's the best way that I can interact independently of what others do? Because we can put energy into into the things for which we have a minimum liberty of, of choice. I choose how to interact with you. I can't choose how how you do. It's very important for us to take advantage of this freedom. And I'd like to invite all of you to give more importance to interactions and then as a consequence changes instead of the time. It's not important if we're together for an hour or 3 hours, 3 days. What's important is what's changing, what feelings are rising, what I'm thinking, how are we interacting. It's not important if my vacation lasts a day or a month. It's important how I live it, how with what I interact, what I become. It's not important if I have a connection, relationship with a person for a month or for 30 years. What's important is it's how um, the interactions, relationship, the connection. I was quite taken by this idea that the time on the watch is really a novelty for human beings. If you think that up till just a short amount of time ago, just until the, the the advent of trains, the cities didn't even have the same time. You know, the clock had a very specific time that it functioned, and but we don't live based on the time of the clock, but they didn't. And today, instead, we give so much importance. Instead, it's important for us to go back to living in harmony with nature. I just want to add one more thing. We are living in a moment where there's 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 a strong movement that's coming about of taking care of nature, and this is very important. There's a fundamental aspect that I haven't found often, which is it, that the environment is not important because it's important for us. It's because we are part of the environment. We don't take advantage of, we don't take advantage of nature. We nature. We are part of nature. It's not that the hand is important for the body. The hand is part of the body. If the hand is wounded, the body is wounded. We're part of nature. So if there's pollution, if environment is sick, then we're not well. I mean, there isn't another there's no alternative. We're part of nature. So taking care of nature means taking care of ourselves. So this duality, we see ourselves as those who use nature as if we didn't, as if we were part of it. This this creates this unhealthy relationship. Something positive that when we talk about talking about taking care of the environment, uh, that economically is positive. This is just a very small aspect. I mean, a pure environment is important also for the spiritual path of each one. It's not it's not healthy for someone in a polluted area, a polluted environment. On so many levels, on a physical level, emotional level. So try a little bit to observe. We are part of nature, and so when in my small, uh, when I try to take care of nature, I'm taking care of myself because I'm constantly interacting with nature. Nature is transforming me, and if I'm in a healthy, and if I'm in a healthy environment, then that interaction is going to be positive, and the opposite is true too. So just to conclude, to the starting point that we are influenceable beings, and we are beings who influence. So every word that we say has power. Every word we hear has power. Just look at physics, the interaction of change. Objects interact inevitably. They transform. There is no there's no interaction that does not bring about transformation. This is what I've understood. And our reality to talk to someone, we're not indifferent after having spoken to that person. When we have a certain emotion, a certain feeling, we're not indifferent. We're interacting also with our thoughts, with our feelings. So it's important to choose and direct ourselves, as we said before, welcome ourselves to accept. And then the second part is what I didn't say. Accept myself. Okay, okay how I am now. How wonderful it would be if I were, without blaming it. I shouldn't be like this. No, I shouldn't. I, I'm the best that I can be given the conditions and variables. But I want to have peace. I want to be more grateful. I want to be able to give more to the world. I'd like to be more generous, more harmony, whatever it is. I want to be rich or more anything, whatever it is. At that point, what do I do to get there? I need to direct myself towards that. So I accept and I direct myself towards what I want better for. Same thing for others. We have someone in front of ourselves, we have someone in front of us that we think a non-virtuous or incorrect whatever we want. First, we try to accept, get, to get close, to then direct to, and everyone has this path, but I need to, I need to welcome and to accept to be able to direct. If when there's conflict, then not to not be able to get close. And when we're but instead, when we have someone in front of us who has different views, our tendency is not to accept, but to for conflict. Rinpoche, he was able to accept and welcome everyone, and then get close and little by little direct. I remember there was someone who had behavior, like let's say, the common view would be they would be kind of very wrong conduct, very heavy drug use. But Rinpoche never, Lama Gangchen never went to him pointing his finger. Instead, he welcomed him, he took care of him, love and affection, and gave him what he had never received, which was love. And when he felt accepted, then he was able to direct him towards a better path. Our tendency is to is to go against the finger, you know. We see this in politics too. It's crazy when there are different points of view that are different. There's not a dialogue to try to understand each other, okay? Because from different, I can understand myself better. No, there's conflict, but this happens in our daily lives too. So when there's someone who has a different view different than our regardless of how wrong we think it is or how negative we think it is, the path is is to accept and welcome, to get close, so that you can have a dialogue instead of having conflict and trying to impose your view. And we need to do the same with ourselves. When we see a habit, we need to accept ourselves. Right. Because I have if I have a bad habit, if I have a habit, it's a habit. So it's not enough to go against it. I need to welcome and correct. So to interact, it's important to have a direction. I just want to leave you with this reflection, which is fundamental for us to have direction to follow. There's there's a direction long term and also short term, almost more important. Who do I want to be? What do I want to develop? How do I want to transform myself? And based on this, we start we work and we work towards this reaching this inner direction. And when there's a clear direction from inside, and that the reaching that that objective becomes our priority, there's nothing that can stop us. It's like the practitioner who was put to prison, tortured, and after he was released, the Dalai Lama asked, he had come, he arrived to India. He came to India and went to um, Dalai Lama asked him what was the most difficult moment that he experienced in prison, and he said, the most difficult thing for me was almost losing passion for Chinese guard who was beating me. When we have a clear objective, inner, no matter what happens, regardless of the context, we're always walking in that direction. Nothing can take us from that. What every context is an opportunity to take us to that objective, and that makes our life meaningful. Even watching TV, there was a teacher who came, who got to the late 1960s. He liked watching TV a lot. There were a friend of ours who was there with him. He was watching like soap operas, in like these 1970s, 80s soap operas, and he was watching it, and he could find examples of Buddhist teachings. Oh, look at how detachment works. You know, constantly using these themes as reflections on Buddhist teachings, or like Lama Gangchen, who, there was a long period in Lama Gangchen's life where he had news constantly on. If you add him physics, maybe he wouldn't know. But then he explained to me one day why he did that, because I said, Rinpoche, you've already heard this news, you know, because once you hear the newscast, it's the same thing all day long. And Rinpoche said, no, I'm not listening to the news. Because, no, I'm not listening to the news. I'm connecting myself with the world, and connecting myself with the world, and offering my prayers, offering my prayers and dedication. When someone has a clear direction, every context can function to support reaching that goal. So we should look for or reinforce direction, reinforce what we already have, because life should bring us to a direction instead of just being lived. And for the last thing, this really is the last thing, today I have to go early because I have to be home by 10. What happens is the memory of Gangchen. Um, a teacher asked me, and this is a teacher asked me something. I did an online interview for a university a few days ago, actually, a few weeks a few weeks before he died. He wasn't well. It was very difficult for him. It was hard for him to get up, and but he always, no matter what, he always wanted to come down and have lunch. You know, you know. I was always looking for things so that he could rest, but he kept, say, let's do puja, let's do this, but he always wanted to come for that. And it was clear that somebody knew, there's anyone who knew what to do, for what was good for himself. It was Rinpoche, so I needed to respect that. And at that moment, I said, no, no, stay, we'll come and eat with you. Don't come down. And at a certain point, he said to me, but Rinpoche, why do you want to come down to eat, at the big table with everyone? And he answered was, because needing joy. And something important is that it's even a Tibetan proverb that he would say. I'm speaking Tibetan. I agree up to a certain point. It means if I don't live my own life with joy, then who else is going to do it for me? So life should be lived with joy up to the end, up to the last, literally up to the last instant, regardless of the context. It should be lived with joy, not with heaviness. And the spiritual path is a path of joy and not heaviness. We face things seriously, but we joy is something else is important for us to cultivate. Let's do our final dedication. I thank all of you who are here and, and those who are home and would like to be here, but now, you know, um, we need to respect the distance and the number of people, that's going to allow us to continue and be together like this.
Chalme chiki pela long chuchi Sada lamge yunte rabzone Dorje change kopa nyur tobe shua Nimo dele tsendele Nime kuyan delekshi Nimse takto delekve Kuncho sumge jingiro Kuncho sumge madrutso, kuncho sumge trasciscio. All'alba o al tramonto, di notte o durante il giorno, possano i tre gioielli concederci le loro benedizioni, possano aiutarci ad ottenere tutte le realizzazioni e cospargere il sentiero della nostra vita con molti segni di buon auspicio. Grazie.